Hey guys, it's Courtney here from Flynn-It, and today I'm going to share with you my favorite way to do a provisional cast on in the round using a crochet hook. And there are a bunch of different ways to do a provisional cast on that I've tried over the years, and this method has become my go-to because it is simple, it keeps your stitches super tidy, and it seems to be the most straightforward method I've found. So I'll walk you through the steps on how to do it. Okay, so to get started, we're going to have our circular needles, whatever size is called for in our pattern, some scrap yarn, and then our working yarn that is called for in the pattern, as well as a crochet hook. And I typically like to use a crochet hook that is one size larger than the knitting needles I'm using because it keeps the stitches looser on your cord. Okay, so we're going to grab our crochet hook and use our scrap yarn to make a slip knot, and then we're going to put that slip knot directly onto our crochet hook and tighten it up just a bit. Okay, so now we want to position our crochet hook on top of our knitting needle or in front of our knitting needle, and I'm going to grab the tail end of that scrap yarn with my left hand just to keep it out of the way, and I'm going to grab the working end with my right hand, and all we want to do is use that working yarn and wrap it behind the knitting needle and in front of the crochet hook, and then you use your crochet hook to pull the yarn through the loop from the slip knot, which creates the first stitch on your needles. And then you just move the crochet hook back up to where it was. Yarn goes behind your needle, in front of the crochet hook. You use your hook to pull the yarn through the loop, creating our second stitch on our needles. And you're gonna get in your groove with the positioning of your crochet hook and your needles as you go. I kind of keep mine in sort of a V shape that's most comfortable to me. You can do whatever position is most comfortable for you. And you're going to continue this process of wrapping that yarn and pulling the loop through until you get the required number of stitches on your needles, and I will meet you back here once I've done that. Okay, so I've cast on the required number of stitches for my pattern, and I just love how nice and tidy this provisional cast on looks. All the stitches are the same size, and it's just super neat. So now that we're at the end, we've cast on our stitches, we're just going to chain a few stitches, meaning we're going to wrap that yarn around our crochet hook and just pull it through. We're not wrapping it around our knitting needle at this point. Just chain a few stitches here. And once we've done that, I am not a crocheter, so sometimes it's a little more awkward for me. But then you just cut that yarn, okay? And I'm just going to pull it through, and now we've got that chain end. Okay, so before we join in the round, we are going to knit into each of the stitches that is on our needles using our working yarn. And we're gonna start at the end that has that chain on it that we finished off the provisional cast on with, okay? So I'm going to grab my working yarn, grab my other needle. We're not joining yet, we're just going to knit into the stitches. So I'm going to insert my needle into that first stitch, put a loop around my working yarn and get it onto my needle there. And we're just going to go around and simply knit each of those stitches, and I will meet you back here once I've done that. Okay, so we've knit through all of those stitches, and I've made sure that none of them are twisted on my needles. They're all laying nice and neat, and we're getting ready to join in the round. So all we're gonna do is continue working with our working yarn and knit that first stitch. And there you go, we're joined in the round, and we're going to continue knitting around and around until we've reached the required length or number of rounds that are required in our pattern. And I'll meet you back here once I've knit a little further. All right, so I have a little sample here where I've knit a bunch more rounds, and you are going to knit to the length or the number of rounds called for in your pattern, which will probably be a lot more than what I have here. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I just wanted to knit some fabric here to give us room to show you how we're going to remove that scrap yarn and get our live stitches back onto a second set of working needles so we're able to do whatever comes next in our pattern. All right, so we're ready to take out that scrap yarn and get these stitches back on our needles. And we're just going to undo the end of our chain here. And you can easily just pull out that chain. We want to have our working needles ready. I like to keep the yarn in the stitch that I'm going into so it doesn't fall off my needle. I stick my needle through that stitch and then I can pull the scrap yarn out. Okay, it got in front here, that's all right. And then, oops, I pulled the next one out here, but we're going to go stitch by stitch and just insert our needle into those live stitches. And it's right where the scrap yarn is. It's kind of those little purl bumps that you see. And then you can just pull out your yarn and keep working. We're gonna go stitch by stitch here, and I'll meet you back here once I've got all the stitches back on my needles. All right, so we have removed all of that scrap yarn. We have the live stitches from our provisional cast on all back onto our second set of working needles, and you are ready to do whatever is called for next in your pattern. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I can't wait to share more with you guys next time. Follow me on Instagram at Flinit to see what I'm working on next.